There comes a moment in every human life when the noise of the world grows too loud, the expectations of others feel too heavy, and the path ahead becomes blurred by confusion. Yet within that chaos lies a silent truth. Does not truly begin the day you are born. It begins the day you finally meet yourself. When you uncover the mind behind your thoughts, the breath behind your stress, the awareness behind your fears, you awaken to a power that has always lived inside you. A power capable of reshaping your destiny, your habits, entire way of existing. Awareness is the first doorway to freedom because it reveals the truth that has always been present but rarely acknowledged. You are not your thoughts, not your impulses, and not the inner noise that rises and falls within you. People move through life on autopilot, unconsciously reacting to situations, repeating old patterns, becoming victims of their own unexamined mind. They feel trapped not because the world is confining them, because their awareness has never been trained to observe the mechanics of the mind from a higher vantage point. Moment you begin to notice the thoughts running through your head, not to obey them, not to resist them, simply to witness them, something extraordinary happens. A space opens between you and your mental patterns, and in that space lies the birth of choice. That space is the beginning of inner freedom. It's like a light shining into a dark room. Before the light appears, the room feels mysterious, intimidating, with shapes you cannot understand. But once the light comes on, everything becomes clear. That once felt overwhelming reveal themselves as shadows. That appeared powerful lose their authority the moment you see them for what they are, temporary movements of the mind, truths about who you are. When you live without awareness, every thought feels like a command. When you live with awareness, becomes an object you can observe. That shift alone creates strength, clarity, and a deep sense of inner stability. Cultivate awareness, you must learn to pause before reacting. If someone speaks with anger, the rise of emotion inside you without becoming the emotion. If stress tries to rush into your chest, deeply and simply witness its presence. The moment you observe the mind loses its grip on you, gives you the ability to step out of the cycle of automatic reactions and step into a place of conscious choice. You realize you do not have to follow fear. You do not have to cling to doubt. You do not have to be controlled by old habits that no longer serve your growth. Awareness is also the foundation of self-knowledge. When you observe your thoughts long enough, you begin to see the patterns that shape your life, the fears that repeat themselves. You tell yourself, the beliefs you hold without questioning. This observation becomes the seed of transformation. You cannot change a pattern you cannot see. Awareness brings these patterns into the light, you to work with them instead of being dominated by them. Through awareness, you begin to separate your true self from the noise of the mind, and in that separation emerges a profound sense of inner liberation. Mastering your attention is one of the most powerful skills you can develop because your attention is the gateway through which your energy and actions flow. Whatever you focus on expands within your inner world, shaping the way you think, feel, and respond to life. Yet most people have never been taught how to consciously direct their attention. They allow it to drift toward distractions, negativity, and unnecessary noise, unaware that these small moments of unconscious focus eventually accumulate into the overall quality of their lives. Your attention is scattered, your energy becomes scattered. When your attention is consumed by problems, your mind becomes heavy. When your attention is deliberately placed on clarity, purpose, and growth, your entire inner landscape begins to transform. Attention is like a lens. When you point the lens toward chaos, the world appears chaotic. When you point it toward possibility, opens. This is why mastering attention feels like gaining control over your life for the first time. You begin to understand that your experience of reality is not shaped solely by circumstances, but by the angle of awareness through which you observe those circumstances. People can live the same day, face the same challenges, and encounter the same difficulties. Yet one feels overwhelmed while the other feels empowered. The difference is not in their life, but in the direction of their attention. To master your attention, you must learn to bring it back to the present moment. The mind constantly wants to wander into the past, replaying old events, regrets, mistakes, or it rushes into the future, worrying about outcomes, imagining fears, and creating unnecessary tension. When you anchor your attention in the here and now, the weight of past and future loses its grip. The present moment becomes a place of strength where clarity returns and decisions can be made without emotional distortion. Every breath becomes a reminder that you are not lost, not drifting, not trapped. You are right here, fully alive, fully aware. Also determines your emotional state. If you place your focus on everything that is going wrong, your mind becomes a breeding ground for stress and frustration. But if you choose to focus on opportunities, lessons, the parts of life that uplift you, your emotional energy rises. This is not denial, it is mastery. You are training your mind to operate from intention rather than reaction, from empowerment rather than fear. Over time, disciplined use of attention shapes your entire life path. It influences the choices you make, the relationships you build, opportunities you attract, and the inner peace you cultivate. When you learn to master your attention, you can do today, you learn to master the story you live. Mastering your attention is one of the most life-altering disciplines because it determines not just what you see in the world, you experience yourself within it. Your attention is the single most valuable resource you possess. More valuable than time, powerful than motivation, more transformative than any external tool. Wherever your attention rests, your energy follows, and wherever your energy flows, your reality begins to shape itself. Most people allow their attention to be hijacked by distractions and the habits of an undisciplined mind. They think they are choosing their life, but truly their life is choosing them. When you master your attention, you reclaim that choice. You become the builder instead of the bystander, the conductor instead of the echo. Attention is not just focus, act of consciously deciding what deserves space within your inner world. Your attention is constantly pulled toward negativity. Your inner atmosphere becomes heavy and stagnant. When your attention is lost in comparison or fear, your self-worth dims. But when your attention is directed toward growth, clarity, purpose, your entire energy shifts. You begin to feel more centered, more capable, more grounded. Your attention becomes the compass guiding your consciousness instead of letting your emotions drag you in every direction. A disciplined awareness, you start noticing how many of your thoughts are unnecessary, how many of your worries are imagined, how many of your distractions are self-created. This recognition alone is a powerful awakening. Mastering attention also requires learning to bring your mind back to the present moment. Untrained mind loves to drift, replaying the past, projecting fears into the future, or creating stories that steal your peace. But the present moment is the only place where truth exists, where strength can be accessed, where clarity becomes natural. When you anchor your attention here, life stops feeling overwhelming. You start seeing situations as they are rather than as your emotions distort them. The mind becomes quieter, the body becomes lighter, and decisions become more conscious rather than reactive. You also begin to see how attention determines your emotional state. If you direct your focus toward what is lacking, your inner world contracts. If you direct it toward what is possible, it expands. Feed thoughts that weaken you, your confidence fades. But if you nourish thoughts that strengthen you, your inner power grows. Disciplined use of attention is not about pretending everything is perfect, about choosing not to give your energy to what diminishes your spirit. Over time, attention becomes your greatest tool for inner mastery, shaping your habits, influencing your mindset, guiding your actions, and ultimately creating a life aligned with your highest potential. Rewriting your internal narrative is one of the most profound transformations you can gift yourself, because the story you tell within becomes the story you live. Without belief you hold. Every limitation you've accepted, you've carried has been shaped by the quiet voice inside you. The voice that often repeats what the world once told you, what you truly are. Most people walk through life following a script they never consciously chose. They replay memories of failure, criticism, or doubt, and unknowingly let those echoes define their identity. But the moment you begin rewriting your inner narrative, you break free from the old patterns and step into the possibility of who you were always meant to become. Internal narrative is powerful because the mind does not question repetition. If you repeat to yourself that you're not enough, the mind accepts it. If you tell yourself that success is out of reach, the mind believes it. But if you speak with clarity, conviction, intention, the mind begins to reshape itself around those words. Rewriting your narrative is not about inflating your ego or pretending life is flawless. It's about reclaiming authorship over the thoughts that guide your choices. You begin to challenge the assumptions you once accepted as truth, recognizing that many of the limits you felt were never your own. They were inherited from past experiences, other people's doubts, or moments of vulnerability when your mind was too tired to resist. As you rewrite your inner story, you create a new emotional foundation. Instead of operating from fear, you begin operating from courage. Reacting from insecurity, you respond with intention. Instead of seeing yourself through the lens of past mistakes, seeing yourself through the lens of growth and potential. This shift is subtle at first. A different choice here, a stronger boundary there, a moment of self-belief where doubt once lived. But over time, these small internal adjustments accumulate, creating a powerful new momentum that changes how you speak, act, and carry yourself in the world. Your inner narrative also shapes the opportunities you notice. When your story is filled with self-doubt, you overlook possibilities because you subconsciously believe you are unworthy or incapable. But when your story is grounded in strength, begin recognizing doors you never saw before. You approach challenges with resilience instead of hesitation. You give yourself permission to try, to grow, to explore, to evolve. The world doesn't change, your perception does. And when perception shifts, everything in your life begins aligning with that newfound inner identity. Rewriting your narrative requires honesty, patience, and persistence. You have to observe the voice within, question its accuracy, consciously replace disempowering thoughts with ones that reflect your true potential. It's a daily practice, steady reshaping of your inner landscape, a commitment to becoming the author of your own mind, rather than a character trapped in someone else's script. Mastering emotional self-regulation is one of the most transformative skills you can develop because it shifts the power from the world around you back into your own hands, will always present challenges, unexpected disruptions, and moments that test your patience, your strength, and your clarity. But emotional self-regulation allows you to navigate these moments without losing yourself. Creates a space between stimulus and reaction, a space where your true power lies. In that space, how you respond instead of reacting from old wounds, conditioned fears, impulsive habits that pull you away from who you want to become. When you learn to regulate your emotions, inner world becomes stable, grounded, and responsive rather than chaotic and unpredictable. This level of mastery requires presence. You begin to observe your emotions the moment they arise instead of allowing them to consume you. You learn to recognize the subtle shifts, the tension in your breath, the tightening of your chest, the quickening of your thoughts. Early cues are invitations to pause, to breathe, to recenter yourself before the emotion grows into a storm. People move through life driven by these storms, letting anger, frustration, or anxiety dictate their words and decisions. When you practice emotional regulation, you become the calm within the storm. You acknowledge the emotion, you feel it fully, yet you choose not to let it overwhelm your clarity or disrupt your purpose. Self-regulation also empowers you to step out of old patterns that may have controlled you for years. Reacting defensively when criticized, you pause and evaluate whether the feedback is useful. Spiraling into anxiety when plans shift unexpectedly, you anchor yourself in adaptability. Responding to stress by shutting down or overthinking, cultivate a state of inner equilibrium that allows you to move forward with intention. This skill doesn't make you emotionless, it makes you emotionally intelligent. It transforms your feelings into signals rather than obstacles, guiding you toward deeper understanding and wiser action. Over time, mastery influences every part of your life. Your relationships, your work, your decisions, your sense of identity. Begin to feel your stability, and they trust your presence. Their power to shake because your response no longer depends on external circumstances, but on internal control. You begin to walk through life with a quiet confidence, knowing that even when emotions arise, they do not own you. You recognize them, honor them, and let them pass like waves that no longer have the ability to pull you under. Cultivating meaningful connections begins with understanding that human relationships are not built on quantity, but on depth, authenticity, and presence. In a world overflowing with noise, distractions, and shallow interactions, genuine connection becomes a powerful force that nourishes your emotional well-being and shapes your sense of belonging. Meaningful connections arise when you allow yourself to be fully present with another person. Not divided by thoughts, distracted by screens, not guarded by fear, but open, attentive, and grounded in sincerity. Connections form the fabric of a life that feels supported rather than isolated, purposeful rather than empty, enriched rather than drained. When you invest in meaningful relationships, you begin to understand the profound difference between people who simply occupy space in your life and those who contribute to your growth, encourage your evolution, remind you of your capabilities, and challenge you to rise above your limitations. Others reflect back the energy you put into the world, teaching you patience, compassion, or boundaries. When you learn to distinguish between the two, you gain the ability to surround yourself with individuals who elevate your spirit rather than deplete it. Discernment does not come from judgment, but from self-respect, from recognizing that your environment shapes your mindset, your actions, and ultimately your destiny. Meaningful connections also require vulnerability, a willingness to be seen beyond your strengths and successes. It is through vulnerability that trust is woven. By sharing your fears and truths, you create a space where others feel safe to do the same. This exchange forms bonds that are deeper, more resilient, fulfilling than the surface-level interactions so many settle for. Vulnerability is not weakness. Courage, the courage to reveal your authentic self and allow genuine intimacy to grow. Communication plays a central role in this process. Real connection is nurtured by honest conversations, active listening, and the ability to express your boundaries without fear. When you communicate with clarity and kindness, relationships strengthen, become opportunities for understanding instead of fractures that widen with silence. When you listen not merely to respond but to understand, you acknowledge the humanity in another person and remind them they are valued. Meaningful connections create a network of support that sustains you through hardship and amplifies your joy during moments of triumph. Ground you, guide you, and remind you that while self-mastery begins within, it is enriched by the people you choose to walk beside. These connections, you cultivate a life filled with depth, resonance, and emotional nourishment, path where you no longer move through the world alone, but supported by bonds that reflect your highest self-embracing continuous self-evolution means understanding that your journey does not end the moment you achieve clarity or reach a milestone. It is a lifelong process of refining your mind, deepening your awareness, and constantly aligning your actions with your highest potential. Growth is not a destination, but a rhythm, steady heartbeat that pulses through every season of your life. When you recognize this, fearing change and begin welcoming it as a necessary force that shapes you into someone stronger, wiser, and more attuned to your purpose. Every challenge becomes a teacher, every setback a redirection, and every success a reminder that you are capable of more than you once believed. Evolution requires a mindset rooted in curiosity rather than comfort. It asks you to question who you were yesterday and who you want to be tomorrow. Instead of clinging to old identities, outdated beliefs, limiting patterns, you begin to observe them with honesty and release what no longer serves you. Shedding is not an act of loss, but of liberation. It clears the space for new skills, new perspectives, and new versions of yourself to emerge. The more you grow, the more you realize that the mind is not a fixed structure, but an open landscape capable of infinite expansion. The thoughts you choose to nurture and the disciplines you commit to. Self-evolution also requires discipline, not the harsh, punishing discipline that drains your spirit, but the quiet, steady discipline that strengthens your inner foundation. It may mean waking up earlier to sit in stillness, dedicating time to read, or practice awareness, or committing to habits that nourish your physical and emotional well-being. Discipline creates consistency, and consistency becomes the pathway through which transformation takes root. Without consistency becomes temporary, with it, evolution becomes inevitable. Another powerful aspect of continuous evolution is your ability to adapt. Will shift, circumstances will change, and uncertainty will arise. But adaptation turns unpredictability into possibility. When you remain flexible in spirit and open in mind, you gain the strength to navigate transitions with grace rather than resistance. You learn to adjust your strategies without abandoning your purpose, to change direction without losing your center. As you evolve, your environment evolves with you. Your relationships shift, your priorities transform, and your aspirations take new shapes. You rise, the more you attract opportunities aligned with your expanded self is the natural consequence of growth, not forced, but earned through patience, awareness, and courageous self-exploration. Self-evolution becomes a quiet promise you make to yourself, a devotion to becoming the fullest expression of who you are meant to be